Welcome to the political napalm. Today we're going to talk about, was the Super Bowl a Christian Super Bowl or not, and what is the backlash on Monday, the day after the Super Bowl? How are things going? Well, when I was watching the Super Bowl yesterday, I didn't really have a dog in that fight whatsoever. I am a New York Giants fan. So basically, I was rooting against Philly. So therefore, I was pro Kansas City Chiefs. However, it was not of any big concern for me as to who won that particular Super Bowl. However, rooting for the Chiefs because I didn't want the Eagles to win. And gotta say, it was an extremely good game overall for somebody who didn't really care about how it was going to end up. It was certainly an entertaining Super Bowl the whole way through, and we can get into discussions about whether there were blown calls and did they change how the game was going to end up and everything like that. It's definitely a discussion for a different time. But there was a couple things that I made mental note of when I was watching the Super Bowl, and a lot of what I predicted is coming true. One thing is I expected today on Monday to see people talking about whether or not the Super Bowl was woke because of all of the electric vehicle ads. However, there were ads for vehicles a little later in the Super Bowl that were not electric vehicle ads. I had a big concern that people were going to be crying on social media that the Super Bowl was woke because of those EV ads, and I saw them relatively back to back. They were all kind of clustered around each other, and there were some later ads that featured standard vehicles. Personally, I wouldn't mind test driving an EV at some point just to see what they're like and what their pickup is like, kind of get used to the cabin of them. But on the same coin, but the flip side of it, I don't know that we're fully ready to be an EV society. There are, of course, major concerns about lithium farms. What do people do when they want to do distance traveling in EVs? Do you literally have to sit there for 20, 30 minutes at a charging station to get your car back up when it takes 5 minutes to um, gas up your car at this point in time? Will they make any concessions to those who are using electrical power for their vehicles and charging them? Are you going to have good gas stations where you can actually do something for 20, 30 minutes while they charge up, like have a relatively decent meal, or have some kind of sit down area, or maybe even a play area for families? Like, you all know what it's like to have a 2 to what, a 10, maybe 8-year old in the back seat of a family trip of reasonable distance. What are you going to do to entertain the kids for 20, 30 minutes while you're charging? And what are the lines going to be like? I mean, I deal with lines coming back from my job at night at the regular gas stations around me. I mean, it's a very rare thing that I pull into my gas station and get a spot without waiting for at least one car to vacate a pump. So I can only imagine what it's like for EVs. I mean, at the very least, a reasonable coffee shop, I think, is what you would need there. But I don't think we have the infrastructure yet to be a complete EV country. And I do have concerns about California when they go EV and everything in the future. I think we need far better infrastructure for it. And I would like to see the complete energy and climate impact of what it is like to build an EV compared to a comparable model gas car, and what it's like over, say, 10 years of life. What is the impact of maintaining that EV over 10 years? What is the impact of maintaining a gas vehicle over 10 years? And what happens at end of life, EOL? Like, when you dispose of a gas vehicle, what is it like as compared to an EV? Those are the kind of studies that I would like to see before I made a more uh, refined decision on it. I think hybrid right now is probably the best way to go, that you can do most of it on EV, but then have 2 to 3 gallons of reserve in gas just in case. Um, Similar to motorcycles, motorcycles have a main tank, and then they have a like 1 to 2 gallon emergency tank. I mean, obviously that's gas and gas, but I think you get my point over there. Is using the emergency when you need it, just in case if you're running out of charge and you're not going to make it to the very sparse EV charging stations. But okay, so I predicted that would be a discussion, and admittedly, I'm not really seeing much of a discussion about the EV ads the day after. It's a lot of talk about Rihanna and whether her performance was good or not, and it does seem to be split along political lines, because it does seem to be split on um, age lines, really. And of course, in the United States, everything is ID Pol or ID poll, ID politics, and everything. So generally, we're pretty much all viewing things through the lens of how does it fit with our political association. And it shouldn't be that way, because people are way more gray area than black and white. And black and white is what ID Paul makes everybody. I do know some conservatives who are pro-choice and everything like that, but I feel at least the way it is portrayed on social media is that you walk in the door of your proverbial life building and you choose right or left, and then kind of like an RPG or game, you have to absorb the stats and the path, um, in terms of everything that you choose based on your politics. And I don't think that's really how humans do operate. I don't think it's how we should operate, but that's where we are. Rihanna's performance, I felt, was lip synced for the most part. The girlfriend noticed that she was likely pregnant, and she is, and also commented that it seems like she was not dancing as much as the backup dancers, likely due to the pregnancy. And I brought up, I was like, didn't Beyonce a long, long time ago reveal the baby bump from um, a Super Bowl performance? And it looks like I was right. It was a Super Bowl performance on that, when she opened the shirt and rubbed the belly and everything. And point taken, it did look like Beyonce did put in a pretty good amount of effort during that halftime show, if I remember correctly. Rihanna's, I thought it was a little phoned in. I wasn't that put off by what is being called the Oompa Loompas or the Chinese balloon dancers. I thought she still did a pretty decent job. I definitely thought there was some lip syncing there, because there was no movement stutter in her voice. When she would move a little bit, you didn't hear the motion being transferred into the voice. And the way she went in and out of her backing tracks and everything, she sang as perfectly and as good as the backing track. So when she would stop and a backing track would continue, you're like, are we being Milli Vanilli'd here or what? Um, but I thought it was still a pretty good performance. I think there is definitely a generation of people that are going to enjoy it. It seems like the older set, the boomer set, is like, I couldn't even understand a word she said. And I did call the backlash yesterday that when she did a crotch grab in there, I was like, oh, that's not going to go over well tomorrow. That's going to be water cooler talk. And it is. A lot of people are commenting on it, and I think it wasn't nearly as offensive as it's making it out to be today, except for the fact that, let's say, if you compare it to Michael Jackson's crotch grabs back in the day, Rihanna did something very similar, but there was sort of like a finger smell in there. And I went, oh, that's not going to go well tomorrow. If she didn't do that, I think she would have gotten away with it. And I don't think anybody would have been seriously talking about it. That extra motion, I think, is what's getting her in hot water. But back to the topic of this video here, there was Jesus commercials during the Super Bowl, and I, for one, yesterday was fine with it. And that may surprise you, but let me tell you why I was fine with it. I was fine with it because it shows you that the media can do it both sides. Seeing the Gutfeld commercials, seeing the Jesus commercials, I'm like, okay, this is one of the grandest stages in the world when it comes to media. And here we are seeing a Gutfeld commercial and we're seeing a Jesus commercial. To touch on the Gutfeld ones for just a moment, I think the guy is a complete ass. I think he's a tool. I think his claim to be king of late night comedy is misrepresenting the facts because when you look at who watches the late shows at that time, he may get a larger market share of who watches him because he's the only one in that share. He's the only one that is doing a conservative show, and it's not a good one. His comedy routinely falls flat. He does that David Letterman thing of trying to force a joke home because it never really lands well to begin with. He's made fun of homeless people. I mean, the guy is a tool, an absolute toolbox. Um, but he claims to be the king because maybe he could get more viewers than a Jimmy or a Kimmel and things like that, or a Seth Meyers. But that's because the larger late night audience, the left leaning audience, is split among three or four choices. It's literally like going to two buffets. It's like having a vegan buffet that only serves broccoli and then having a buffet that has chicken and hamburgers and pizzas and mac and cheese and lobsters and crab dip and egg salad, chicken salad, potato salad. And they're that buffet, people are choosing what they want off of it because there's 10, 12 choices, but the vegetarian or the vegan buffet only has broccoli. And it's saying that, okay, 100% of the people that come in the door for the vegetarian or the vegan buffet choose the broccoli. Well, it's because it's the only choice. But now compare how many people walk up to the vegan buffet as compared to the amount of people who walk up to the standard buffet, and that's where the difference is. It is something like, overall, if you take all of the left leaning night shows and compare them to Gutfield as groups, as entity, Gutfeld loses. He just simply has a niche that he's carved out for himself, and he's the only one supplying to that niche. Whereas everybody else is literally everybody else. So he isn't the king of night shows by any stretch. He's the king of his own tiny little kingdom. And that's what it is. But again, diverted from the topic over here, the Jesus commercials. I actually was fine seeing them. I mean, we all remember the commercials for Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints and everything like that. I certainly remember them being, going through my years on this planet. Um, if you were ever watching Adult Swim or Toonami on Cartoon Network, and as it ended from the adult shows into the daytime kid shows, there was always that Christian music CD commercial that always signified the end of the adults and the start of the kids. And it's become a meme. It's kind of become a joke at this point, but it was there every day. It was a warm little pillow that I knew, okay, the adult stuff is done. It's back to the kid stuff because the now is the time for worship commercial is on. Here, this one. Nope, nope, nope. It's actually not here. I had it I had it saved as. Let's see. No, now is the time to worship commercial. That's not it. Let's see. Christian music. And the thing that struck me about this commercial, worship together. Yeah, here it is. The thing that struck me about this commercial, which I'm going to mute because I don't want to get popped over here, there, this right here. Um, there's something so culty about this commercial at certain points of it because there are these kids, young kids, teenagers that just sit there and I think it's like around, yes, that it's just this eyes closed, the hand. I mean, it seems very culty to me, being somebody who is not a follower of an organized religion. But I was happy to see the commercials because combined, Gutfeld to Jesus commercials, I'm like, okay, can conservatives really say now that they can't get a spot in the big leagues because everybody hates conservatives, everybody hates conservative messaging. Everybody downs us. Nobody wants to let us on their TV, so we have to go to our OANs and our Newsmaxes and our Fox News and everything. And now even Fox News is betraying us and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm no longer happy that I felt that yesterday because the dark money behind those commercials isn't particularly good. And AOC is speaking out against it, to which people are retaliating against her for speaking out on it, especially Marjorie Yeti Three Toes saying that she needs to go and find Jesus. So, what is the deal with that commercial? Now, I thought it was a good message because it is what the Christian message should be: inclusivity, all people, literally kind of giving me your poor and huddled masses, but to religion and Jesus' love. And Jesus died for your sins. And we should love everybody and we should turn the other cheek and we should be willing to forgive. And a mass murderer can repent on death row and still find God, and all of those messages and everything like that. I thought the commercial had a good message, except it's a little bit hypocritical based on the people who've given to it. So the commercial cost, or the commercial campaign, cost about $20 million, and it's called the He Gets Us campaign. Um, some people are saying it's 100 million. I thought I heard it was like 20 million, but it might actually be 100 million. And it's whatever you're facing, Jesus faced it too. And it's getting noticed. One title, The Rebels, netted 122 million views. However, some of those might be completely ironic. Google searches for He Gets Us have spiked since the beginning of the year. Now, I didn't encounter it until the Super Bowl. But here's the deal: the He Gets Us ads have come from a campaign that was a subsidiary of the Servant Foundation, also known as Signatory. According to research, the Servant Foundation has donated tens of millions to the Alliance Defending Freedom, a conservative Christian legal group. The ADF has been involved in several legislative pushes to curtail LGBTQ rights and quash non discrimination legislation in the Supreme Court. One of the people who has visibly and publicly given highly to this campaign is Slobby Nobby's co founder, David Green. This is very, very problematic. When you know what Chick-fil-A has done, when you know what Hobby Lobby has done, and the irony of the fact that I have a gay friend who works for Hobby Lobby. I haven't really talked to him in a few years. We've lost touch, but when he moved to, of all places, Texas, he got a job at Hobby Lobby. And he's gay. So I'm like, oh boy, that was always going to be fun. Aside from Hobby Lobby's policy of like no cell phones down on the floor, which I in some ways get, you're not supposed to be distracted if you're supposed to be stocking a shelf or ringing up a customer at a register. You don't want to be sitting there like browsing Facebook and just being like chewing your gum. One moment, I got to respond to Tiffany. I think those kinds of rules just sound so draconian when you hear them, and especially if you're somebody whose family is maybe going through some health crises and everything like that, and you need to very distinctly keep in contact. Um, That sounds very dark and medieval, but in some ways I do get it. The fact that this has its roots in the evangelical set, and the evangelical set was wooed over to Trump by Jerry Falwell Jr., and Jerry Falwell Jr.'s life has completely collapsed after pictures surfaced of him being on that boat with the shirts, the bellies exposed, and the co-ed that he was with was like pregnant, and it sort of looked. They said they were reenacting something from Trailer Park Boys, but it still looked very, very suspicious. And then, of course, the news came out that he liked watching his wife bang the pool boy, and then he was fired from Liberty being a drunk, and because of that situation, and then he did an article in Vanity Fair that said, "You should do as I say, not as I do, because we're not actually that religious. It's just my family's name. We're normal people who clearly are into swinging because I get off on watching my wife bang the pool boy." By the way, she did a Mrs. Robinson moment. She has like a college age son and was interested in somebody who was in the college kids college band. I think it was like the marching band. I don't think it was like he plays in a band like the Rolling Stones or something like that. I think somebody he's a musician with in the college band she was interested in. So that family is a complete travesty of Christian values, and yet people followed him over to Trump, and that's where the evangelical set went in 2016. However, by 2020, with all the scandals, they have started to fall off of leaning so heavily on Trump, but they're still likely going to lean right. And it comes through things of like Billy Graham, this Wheaton College, which has a deep history of abolitionism and racial justice. However, it is one of the worst campuses for LGBTQ youth, and you have to sign a community covenant, which is ridiculous. I think it was Antioch College back in the 90s who created the dating contract, which was a very step by step thing of, can I ask you out? Can I touch your hand? Is it okay if I kiss you? It it was a natural retaliation to a lot of the campus rapes that were occurring at the time, a lot of the not stranger assaults that was happening. You see it in the movie Higher Learning was a prime example of what was happening on campuses at the time. And of course, you needed a Christian or religious other side of the scale to balance things out. But that was a infamous viral thing back in the 90s was the dating covenant or the dating contract. And now I'm more upset that those ads aired, and I'm less happy about the message. I'm less happy about its existence to balance the scales when all of the dark money um, that was behind it, mega churches, mega events, and everything like that. You do need to give people a way to come to religion and come to Jesus, especially in today's society. I think it needs to exist. I think it needs to be out there. I think nothing should be shoved down your throat. You know, you have these people who sit there and say that demonic elements and satanic elements like um, trans rights and gay rights and everything is a slippery slope and a rainbow gun to the back of your head. If I can find that, here it is over here. This, I think, is too far. Bake the cake or go to court. Yeah, that's a discrimination law. I mean, it could have been for anything. What if it was, this wouldn't be on this picture if this was, say, a mixed marriage couple that said bake the cake or go to court, and it was a religious person saying, no, I stand against mixed marriages. I don't want to do this. This isn't so much about who the event was on behalf of, so much as it was on the person who was refusing to do it. Say My Pronouns, a Loser Job 2015. First of all, I think this is more recent than 2015. Um, Second of all, again, that is equality and comfort in the workplace. I was at a job back in 2001 when two religious Christian people tried to convert me to Christianity because of a dark moment that I was going through in my life. Not like suicide or anything like that, not that dark, but they were trying to convert me to Christianity at work and did corner me on it. I didn't know at the time that that was such a blatant and violent HR violation, but it was. I could have gotten them fired had I ever talked to HR about it. I just didn't know at the time, didn't understand it. But that had no place being in my work. And I can go back to 1998 and tell you that I worked with somebody who left work for a few months as a man and came back as a woman. And we were totally accepting of it. They went away as a Robbie and they came back as a Kelly. It was discussed with the staff, and we were prepped for it, and there was no hatred, there was no bigotry, there was no anything whatsoever towards this person. They were just asked to use the ladies' room on a different floor than the floor we worked on to make everybody comfortable. But that person had a right to be treated equally at their job, and misgendering that person or using the pronouns or using what is called a dead name, they have the right to exist at work without those things. So this is just a bullshit line right here. 2023, the kids will watch drag shows. Again, more bullshit. Every parent who allows their kids to go to a drag book reading at a library knows full well exactly what is happening there. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised. So there is no gun to the back of any parent's head that says your kid will watch a drag show. No, that's not happening. A parent is making an informed choice to let their kid or not let their kid go to one of those. This is a absolute piece of shit graphic right over here. And apparently now they're maybe even thinking she wore a pentagram when it was the belt buckle for her wiring, which ranks right up there with the people who were saying that it was Antifa on January 6th and using the game tattoo that was believed to be a hammer and sickle from communism and socialism, or that the QAnon shaman can't be a Trumper because he's like basically half naked. And I think this is a good point. If you're going to spend $20 million, okay, so the campaign is 100 million, the ad was 20 million. This is it exactly. You should be taxed, and that money could have gone to do more Christian and religious related things like setting up a homeless shelter or feeding the homeless or just something other than what they spent it on. But it's a tax evasion scam, as people are bringing it up. That it is money laundering from conservative Christian right wing businesses who just see their message as unpopular. And as AOC said, it makes it look like fascism is benign. And I think she has a very valid point. When you see the ads itself in a vacuum, I would say she doesn't have a point and she's overreacting. When you look into the campaign behind it and you realize what is there, then that goes to show you that she is right. And anything attacking her for that thought is just conservatism with their bluster and being called out. So here's something. The ad campaign comes as Christian identity has waned in the U.S. in recent decades. According to Pew Research, 63% of American adults identified as Christian in 2022, down from 90% in the 1990s. What the hell does that tell you? It tells you that conservative and religious backing has gone over to unpopular opinions and campaigns. And that as the youth comes out from a previously heavy religious culture of, um, you know, uh, my grandparents being very religious, and it begins to weaken as they pass down that religion onto the boomers. and then the boomers were happy to have kind of crawled out of the 50s religion. So they weren't necessarily imparting it on their kids, and then their kids were making way more informed decisions. And honestly, the internet, I think that is the biggest destruction of organized religion in the United States. Is the internet has shown people you don't have to live the way that you do. I knew somebody who entered into a an open relationship, and she did it because she grew up in not a particularly good way, and she looked at what's around her. So when she got into this boyfriend who was voyeuristic and got, believed that they had an open relationship, she did it because she thought, well, that's just what you do. That's what she grew up with. So she thought she was in a functional and normal relationship, and didn't really realize how bad it was until she fell for somebody who had no interest in an open relationship, just wanted to be dedicated to her and monogamous, and didn't want to farm her out to have sex with other people. And they met on the internet. This is one of the most destructive forces, I think, against organized religion, is not because the media is satanic, not because the internet is Satan's playground, but it's informative. It is world opening. It is eye opening. It shows people you don't have to live the way your little family pocket does. And maybe your family pocket is wrong. Or maybe you look at your family pocket and look at the internet and say, my God, I'm so glad we're doing it this way because everything else is disgusting. So the dark money behind those ads, while the message is great, and I think the message needs to exist, and I think if the church wants to get youth and somewhere in between Gen X and the current youth of the day, they need to put the messages out there that religion can be inclusive, but it needs to be squeaky clean the whole way through. And they need to promote the inclusivity, but actually have it come from inclusive places. This group is not inclusive. They have stood for the opposite of inclusivity. So again, it's just typical hypocrisy that we see. And I want to say it's typical hypocrisy that we see on the right, but in the beginning of the video I said not everything should be tied to ID poll. It shouldn't be a right or a left thing, but unfortunately conservatism has been tied to religion in the United States for decades. So it is, in a way, a form of right wing hypocrisy to put out a message that says we're inclusive, Jesus gets you, we understand all of that stuff, but then have it be backed by people who are tied to being conservative publicly. Hobby Lobby, Chick-fil-A, organizations like that who try to say no, insurance shouldn't be for contraceptives. No, insurance shouldn't be for female care and abortions and everything like that. Well, abortion is female care, whether you like it or not. And they have the right to it. And no conservative Christian value should allow a woman not to be able to do that. It should be on her own conscience and a conversation between her and her doctors, not anything that a church believes should be the state. And here's a good thing that's saying the 1974 Lausanne Covenant is an important unifying document in evangelical churches, and it was started by the Christian leader Billy Graham. Documents and decisions have come out of that movement that have decried the idolatry of disordered sexuality, in other words, deviance, and anything that isn't man and woman sex is deviant. There are blue laws in the books on certain states that tell you certain sexual positions are illegal. Did you know that? And they exist still on the books so that they can be used against couples who aren't heterosexual. And you may say, oh, how does that ever happen? But if for some reason the law was called on you and they came in, and in Virginia, for example, if you were having sex in not missionary position, that is a blue law. There's a word for what you would be busted for, and it begins with an S and it ends with a Y. And that law is still on the books because it can be used against LGBTQ couples and homosexual couples. It's disgusting, isn't it? So, anyway, thanks for checking out this video with me here on the Political Napalm. And what did you think about the commercials during the Super Bowl? Did you watch it? What did you think about these particular Jesus Gets You ads when they aired? Did you have a response to it? I'd like to hear it below. Peace out.